You don't put a moniker like leading basketball mind.
I don't.
Yeah.
Shockingly, Brian, I don't say that about myself.
I was just saying to Rachel how I missed reading her stuff that she used to write as Rachel Alexander. She's such a great writer and reporter. But as she pointed out, she writes every day because she has to do an opening for the Jump every day. So she's writing 5 NBA columns a week.
I would argue that Rachel might, with the exception of Kevin Pelton might have you, Rach, in like
Kevin
total
writes a lot,
words.
yeah.
But Rachel probably writes, although Kevin Pelton, well,
he's prolific.
I don't know. But Rachel writes as much about the NBA as anybody else in the country. I think that's a fair statement. And just because it's not printed out for you to click on to read doesn't mean she's not working at it. And as somebody who's written a handful of those monologues when I filled in for Rachel, it is a challenge to make something short. Like that's one of the things
Tell me about it.
Move from.
Yeah.
TV
Sports reporters,
writing.
baby. I'd send in my parting shot final.
Parting shot.
Is that parting shot? I can't remember. I can't remember all the shows I've been on. You said one that you thought was pretty good, and Joe Valera, the producer, would be like, "It's 280 words. I need 220 words." I'm like, "Oh, really, really?" So, brevity is the soul of wit. Yes, dear.
When you're on Around the Horn, you have to prepare it's not called a parting shot. What is that?
30
what is
seconds.
It called at the end if you win?
Yeah, you do, but you don't.
Either way?
Well, sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes we do a conference call in the morning. We talk about what we might talk about on the show, and then by the time we sit down in the chair, it's 3 or 4 hours later. And like, for instance, a day like today, all the topics we may have had would have been changed completely because a lot of things happened this morning. Right. So then you just sort of have to change that on the fly. So by the time I never write down my 30 seconds. Sometimes I walk in there and I don't even know what I'm doing.
Because I feel like some people are reading off a prompter on their 30 seconds.
Never.
Nobody?
No. Not for Around the Horn. For the sports reporters, 100%.
I think on Around the Horn, sometimes there's some reading.
Well, maybe there is. Maybe there is, and maybe
not by you, Jackie McMullen.
No, are you kidding me? I'm like winging it. Sometimes I'm like, they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm looking around the room. I'm like, "I'm going to talk about cupcakes," or I was really mad though, Brian, because I wanted to win the day Tom Petty died, so I could talk about Tom Petty, but I did not win that day.
They should have given you an honor. You can probably pull rank and say, ask for just about anybody.
Brian,
maybe
you were on our show when Tom Petty died, and I thought the day it happened, well, the first day he was sick and we hadn't gotten confirmation, and then the second day I thought you were going to say something, and then, I don't know, maybe the moment had passed.
So Brian and I both saw Tom Petty on this final tour here, as it turns out.
Brian is the biggest Tom Petty fan I know.
Right.
You are also a pretty large
huge Tom Petty fan. Yeah, my friend is the biggest Tom Petty fan you will ever know, and he's in the music business, and he got to know Tom so well that he ended up on stage handing Tom Petty his guitars during his shows. And so he was gracious enough to get Michael and myself, my husband, backstage with Tom Petty's band, not Tom Petty, who was in his own trailer. But I had dinner with Bruce Campbell and Benmont Trench and all those guys before one of their shows in Providence. Like, we sat and had dinner with them. It was the most amazing experience.
The Heartbreakers, it's kind of heartbreaking. That I really hope that the Heartbreakers, did you read, he gave a final interview. I mean, he didn't know it was his final interview, but he gave an interview to the LA Times really just a couple of days before he died. And I don't know if you saw this, Jackie, but he was saying how, because they'd all, reached their mid to late 60s. And he said, if any one of us passes away, I don't think that we would ever go on. Which is incredible that he said that, a couple of days before he died.
Wow.
I really would love it if the Heartbreakers would continue to play in some form.
Well, Mike Campbell plays once in a while right in the Bay Area. He'll just show up somewhere at a small club and play on his own. Did you know that? Yeah,
and Benmont, who's the piano player, he plays background on a lot of different, he does backing, and so does Steve Ferroni, who's their drummer. They're all very much in demand, but it's really just kind of sad that the Heartbreakers are all still with us and they don't play. I mean, that's kind of melancholy. But
it is.
What is it melancholy? We have the start of the NBA season. We're supposed to
That's the worst transition in the history. That's seriously, I'm sorry, I'm just calling you out right now. Episode, whatever this is, of the Hoop Collective, Brian has now made You cannot go from Tom Petty
That was
dying
bad.
in one sentence
I just
to
didn't
all
want
of
to
that.
bring people down, and people don't want to.
I have a question. I'm going to do
listen
one.
to
I'm going to give you a transitional element. Are you ready?
Among no
Jackie
wildflowers.
just told
Sorry,
a story.
right.
That's it. We can't afford that.
I know we can't. I
know.
do that all the time to
Jackie
around the
just
horn.
told-
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Jackie just told a story about her and her husband. And Jackie, what is your nickname for your husband?
I don't know.
No, come on.
Which one? I have lots of nicknames for him. Tell me. You got to tell me. I don't remember.
Jackie, in the story she tells me about her husband, she refers to him as the Pilgrim.
Oh, the Pilgrim. I do call him a pilgrim. That's true. He is a pilgrim. So when we first got married and bought our house, I wanted to have a garden, and I'm like, never had any idea how to do it. And he's like, well, you just got to take a shovel and just dig all the dirt out. I'm like, really? So he went to work, and I spent all day like digging. And then I went to the hardware store because the shovel broke, and there was this thing called like a rototiller and all these things that make a garden. And then I realized, yep, I am married to a pilgrim.
There you go. Now transition to
Sorry.
basketball.
I
Brian.
forgot about that. I told you that.
In New England, very appropriate
Yes.
for a pilgrim. In New
We must suffer. When we have fun, Brian, when we go on vacation, we must punish ourselves for a week after we get home because we've had too much fun. He's one of 7 kids who's put himself through college, 100% of his own education, put himself through graduate school, self-made guy, and that's what pilgrims do.
Right. Thanksgiving, big Thanksgiving coming up for him.
Favorite holiday? His favorite holiday, of course, is Thanksgiving.
Perfect. Well, this is such a perfect nickname then.
It is.
Speaking of New England, how about that?
There you
Yeah,
go.
that was
Much
better.
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 Much better.
Thank you.